Tom, thank you for that update. Meantime, congressional leaders seek a compromise. The Russia-Ukraine war coming up on this new milestone. February 24th will mark the third year of fighting. But is there a path to peace? And what will it take to bring both sides to the negotiating table? Joining us now, Ukrainian political analyst Andrij Dobriansky. I'm going to save that question for the end of our discussion. Let's begin with the aid for Ukraine right now at another impasse in Washington, D.C. What do you believe is getting in the way of an agreement on this?
I think that's the right way to frame it. Something is getting in the way because we know that a majority of senators, a majority of members, both Republican and Democrat, want this to happen. And in fact, the leaders of the three head committees in the House, Republican-led committees of House Intelligence, House Foreign Affairs, and House Armed Services, put out a victory plan for Ukraine directed towards the White House, saying that we want to see more aid go to Ukraine, military aid go to Ukraine. So it would be really unfortunate if, as we have endured this, Ukraine has endured this for over a month now, this delay in getting more aid, if it were to fall victim to simple radical fringe voices who are gumming up the works to make sure that this doesn't happen. Because as we've seen since December 29th, Russia has ramped up the amount of bombing campaigns across the entire country, where they're willing to spend as much as $1 billion worth of missiles against Ukraine just to see if Ukraine's defensive weapons have run out, the same ones we're trying to get from the United States.
Do you get a feeling this is more about the border than Ukraine? And while the two are tied together, are you optimistic a deal is reached?
Oh, it's going up and down and up and down. But this is what I've described to many of my new Ukrainian advocates, a lot of people who've just been getting into Ukrainian advocacy over the last year. A lot of things can gum up the works in United States Congress, even after you put in yourself a year's worth of work. This especially is true with immigration reform. This is not the first time that immigration reform has been tried, but any of these kind of packages can fall apart at the last minute due to conflicts and arguments about things that are not central to the bill itself. This is something that people who work in Washington are very familiar with. That's why crafting legislation is often compared to sausage making. You don't really want to see how it happens, but you're glad when it happens. And Congress actually demonstrated that within the last 48 hours when they decided to make a deal on the child tax credit. That is something that was not on the main headlines for over a year now. And yet somehow they were able to, again, hide the sausage making behind closed doors and get to a resolution on that. We hope that the less people talk about Ukraine openly and yell at each other, and that's really, again, the fringe voices. And so long as they focus on getting a deal made, hopefully that means that Ukraine can see that additional aid come either by the end of this month or early February.
I know it's incredibly frustrating because the process takes a long time. It moves at a snail's pace. Zelensky is frustrated as well. In some of his recent comments said he actually believes that Russia has the upper hand now 2 years into this war. Do you agree with that? As I look at some of the numbers, I think Russia controls about 17.5% of Ukraine.
Well, it's not so much as what's happening on the battlefield, but especially the sanctions issue, Russia's economy. Now, nobody in the West has access to Russia's internal numbers, and they have not published publicly their economic numbers. So whatever they put out, we should always take with a grain of salt. But we do know for a fact that Russian weapons are made with Western chips. We know that big Western companies still sell their products in Russia, even at the risk of getting backlash. So it is a certain time after, again, I said on December 29th, over $1 billion of rockets were fired at Ukraine. Maternity wards were hit. Solely civilian areas, museums were hit again. If the West cannot determine that they should not be supporting this kind of regime, that's when Russia will win. And that's really the frustration that Ukraine expresses, whether it's at Davos, which is happening right now, whether it's different international conferences. They just want to make sure that when we promise as the West that we are going to punish Russia for what they did, that we don't, give them an option to weasel their way out of it.
Yeah, the U.S. matters in this at this critical time. Andrij Dobriansky, as always, thank you. To the latest now in the Middle East, the